Hello everyone and welcome to Film Fights. Today we have Batman v Superman versus Captain America Civil War. Weirdly enough, in the year 2016 came two comic book movies about iconic superheroes fighting each other. In March came Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, and in May came Captain America Civil War. Now I'm sure the DC versus Marvel debate has been going on for decades, but in my recent memory, it's never been as heated as it is now. Both DC under Warner Bros. And Marvel under Disney have cinematic universes that share a single continuity. Of course, Marvel's been doing this for what's becoming a decade with the release of Iron Man in 2008, while DC has been playing catch-up ever since Man of Steel in 2013. Now in 2016, when both released similar movies, there's no better time to compare the two. So which did the superhero fight movie better, Dawn of Justice or Civil War? I'm gonna start with the film's stories. Batman vs Superman will be first, so here we go. During the events of Man of Steel, Superman recklessly leveled Metropolis in an effort to defeat General Zod. Bruce Wayne sees all the destruction and decides that Superman's a threat to human civilization. Bruce decides that it's necessary to take out Superman in order to defend humanity. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor's son schemes to frame Superman and have him and Batman fight. Batman v Superman addresses one of my biggest problems with Man of Steel. Superman just recklessly destroys half a city and doesn't remorse about any of the thousands of lives he killed. This gives Bruce Wayne a great motivation to kill Superman, so I'm glad they really took advantage of that huge flaw that was in Man of Steel. So although there's a good premise for a movie, and it really builds on Man of Steel, nothing else about the story actually works. I'll break down all the characters later on, but overall, Lois Lane's story makes no sense. Lex Luthor's story makes no sense. Wonder Woman is just a cameo who makes no sense and is really dumb what she has to do. So nothing really makes that much sense in this movie, but I'll get to that later. There's a good story there that's being told, but it's bogged down by all these dumb side stories that are really stupid. So ultimately, what we're left with is a good premise for a movie, but it falls flat on execution. So it's a huge misfire on the part of DC and Warner Brothers. Now for Civil War. The story starts with half of the Avengers preventing Rumlow from the Winter Soldier, now Crossbones, from getting a certain chemical. That part isn't explained much, as it's not important to the overall story. In the fight, Scarlet Witch accidentally blows up part of a building. Because of the destruction, it's decided that the Avengers should be placed under the supervision of the UN by the Sokovia Accords, named after the city that was destroyed by Ultron in The Age of Ultron. Captain America and his allies agreed that they would be better at controlling themselves than the UN would. After refusing to cooperate with the Accords, Iron Man and those who support him are pitted against Captain America and his supporters. The dispute is made even worse after Steve's old friend Bucky, now the Winter Soldier, is accused of bombing the UN when they were signing the Sokovia Accords. What's really interesting about comparing these two movies is that in Batman v Superman, Batman is the main protagonist, and he's going after the one who's causing the destruction, but thinks he can handle himself without government regulation. In Captain America Civil War, the roles are completely reversed. The protagonists are the ones who don't want to be regulated, and think that they can govern themselves better than politicians, and the antagonists are the ones who are trying to put them under control. Ultimately though, I think Captain America Civil War has a better story. I think it's told better, it's presented better, it has less distractions, like Wonder Woman literally playing trailers for upcoming Justice League movies. So since there's much less of that garbage, Captain America Civil War ultimately has the better story. Now which one has the better characters? So first I'll be exploring the conflict between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, and then I'll address the conflict between Batman and Superman. I think everyone understands Captain America's personality. He's an old-fashioned, optimistic, and highly moral man who often finds himself in a world where none of that seems to be relevant anymore. It may be cheesy, but he's often portrayed as the beacon of light in this dark modern world that we find ourselves in. But just like Agent Coulson said in The Avengers, some people might just need a little old-fashioned. A lot of great and memorable stories are about people who grow as characters. They go through some sort of character arc. But some of the best stories are also about people who refuse to change in a world that's pressuring them. Captain America would be the perfect example of this. That part of his character becomes clear in The Winter Soldier and carries on to this film. Even when he's under the pressure of his friends and the law, Steve knows that he has to take the moral high ground against Stark. I love the speech that Sharon Carter, Peggy's great-niece, gives at Peggy's funeral. Even when the whole world is telling you to move, you plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye, and say, "No, you move." These words summarize Steve's whole character in both The Winter Soldier and Civil War. The UN wants him under their supervision, but he knows that the Avengers would be better off under their own. In The Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. believed that people should give up their freedom in order to create a safer world. As Steve pointed out, they're pointing a gun at everyone's head and calling it safety. He obviously believes in self-determination, and he sees the same situation play out between the Avengers and the Sokovia Accords. Cap's main argument being that the politicians at the UN are just that, politicians. They have their own agendas that the Avengers will have to be fighting for. They would have to fight for causes they didn't believe in, or stand down when the UN didn't want their interference in a situation. It's very relevant to the battle we see today between individual liberties and supposed safety. As for Tony Stark, he's technically one of the antagonists of the Civil War, but he, like Steve, is trying to do the right thing. After the death of multiple people in Nigeria that Scarlet Witch caused, he wants to put the Avengers under the supervision of the UN. Stark really becomes committed to that stance after he is confronted by the mother of a man who was killed in the fight in Sokovia at the end of the Avengers Age of Ultron. Stark blames himself for the man's death and sees the Sokovia Accords as a way to right his wrongdoings. Both sides get their say, and both bring up some good points. You understand where both Steve and Tony are coming from, and it makes the conflict all that more interesting when they start fighting each other. Maybe more entertaining than the physical fights themselves are the moral fights that Captain America and Iron Man have. Unfortunately, that's not the case for Batman v Superman. For the most part, both Batman and Superman's motivations were inconsistent and sloppy. For most of the movie, though, I understood Batman's reason for wanting to kill Superman. Unlike Captain America and his allies, Superman has the capability of destroying mankind. He even willingly destroyed billions of dollars in property damage and killed thousands just to get a few more punches on Zod. I especially like the scene with Bruce and Alfred, where Bruce explains that if there's even a 1% chance, then we have to take it with absolute certainty. I love how Dawn of Justice emphasizes one of the biggest problems many people had with Man of Steel, which was Superman's complete disregard for human life. And that was one of the much better things done in the old Superman movies. Superman cared so much for people that it baffled Zod. Two things ruined Batman for me, and blurred his motivations. We all saw this one coming, when Superman yelled, "Martha!" and Batman decided to spare his life. It makes no sense that Superman would address his mom by her first name, but besides that, just because Superman's mommy has the same name as his, he decides to spare him? DC fanboys will defend this by trying to argue this showed Batman Superman's humanity by showing Batman that he has a human mom who he cares about. But Batman should have already assumed that Superman had relationships with other humans. Of course he had people who cared about him. And what happened to the part of Superman needing to be taken as an absolute certainty? He can destroy mankind. Nothing has changed about Superman. This 180-degree turn in Batman's point of view was completely unjustified. Unjustified, okay. The second thing that undermined his character for me was the finale with Doomsday. Batman believed Superman was a threat because he pointlessly brought the fight with Zod to Metropolis and leveled buildings. Batman did the exact same thing in the fight with Doomsday. It was established that Doomsday got stuck on an island that was not populated. Batman, however, decided to bring Doomsday into the middle of Gotham City to fight because that's where his kryptonite spear was that he was going to use to kill Superman. So instead of coming back to Doomsday with the spear, he decided to bring a highly destructive monster into Gotham. Of course, this fight results in large sections of the city being completely leveled. This damage was much worse than what was done in Man of Steel. Therefore, Batman becomes the biggest hypocrite and extremely inconsistent. What's also inconsistent It's how the rest of the world views Batman. Bruce Wayne says that he's been Batman for 20 years, but whenever anyone else talks about Batman, they describe him as a vigilante who just causes more trouble. Keep in mind, this is after he fought the Joker and probably saved Gotham multiple times. This isn't Batman Year 1 for Pete's sake. It's been 20 years! People should view him as Gotham's savior by now. Also, I don't like how Batman actually kills people. It seems like a drastic change than what is traditionally part of Batman's character, which is never killing. The only apparent explanation for this change was to make the new Batman seem edgier than Nolan's, to appeal to those middle school tweens who like edgy stuff. That's the best that we can assume, considering that it's never brought up in the film itself. Alfred doesn't even bring it up, it just happens. I didn't mean to go on a bit of a rant there, but there are a lot of problems that need pointing out, so I'm going to do it. Now about Superman. Even though Superman's name is in the title, we don't get to see much of him or learn anything about him. This was another big problem with Man of Steel. We don't know who Henry Cavill's Superman is, we just know who he isn't. He's not the Christopher Reeve Superman, or the one in Superman Returns. We don't get to know how he feels about the people who worship him, or the people who hate him. We don't even know how he feels about killing, which is odd considering it's the main reason why Batman wants him dead. Superman yelled when he killed Zod, but doesn't mind killing the people of Metropolis or the military group in Africa. So where he stands is very unclear. Strangely, he doesn't even get much motivation for wanting to kill Batman. Lex kidnaps his mom, whose name is Martha, and threatens to kill her if Batman's not dead. One motivation may be that Clark Kent doesn't like how Batman gives vigilante justice above the law, even though that's exactly what he does too. Neither of these should actually drive Superman into fighting Batman though. When the two have a verbal argument, it just seems like two hypocrites staring at each other in the face. Both Batman and Superman kill countless people and fight injustice above the law. If it wasn't obvious by now, the opposing sides in Captain America Civil War are handled much better than in Dawn of Justice. Lois Lane is also awkwardly utilized. The movie just has no idea what to do with her. She spends much of the movie investigating Lex Luthor and some bullets that were used in an early scene, even though we the audience already know he's the one pulling all the strings. In Civil War, both sides had clear, rational, and consistent motivations and characters. We the audience were able to see where both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers were coming from. While I agreed with Batman for most of this movie, he changes for an extremely stupid reason. He's a hypocrite, and he pointlessly kills people. The characters are the heart and soul of any movie, and Captain America Civil War definitely had better characters. The antagonists, the bigger bads if you will, in both movies are actually nearly identical. Both villain plots in Batman v Superman and in Civil War are about someone who wants to see the two main characters fight each other, and they take steps to get them closer to fighting. Both villains also get extremely lucky that their convoluted plans actually work. It's like they both read the scripts for their movie. In Batman v Superman, Lex tries to frame Superman and make him look evil to convince the public, and specifically Batman, that he's a threat. Luckily for him, Batman already thinks Superman's a threat and already wants to kill him. And even luckier, both Batman and Lex initiate their plans about 2 years after Man of Steel. I don't know why they both waited for so long, especially Batman. If Superman's such a threat, why wait to kill him? I have no idea why Lex decided to create Doomsday 2. Was it to kill Superman? Because I thought that's what Batman was for. If anything, creating a giant world-destroying monster would make Batman and Superman team up instead. There are a lot of things that are unclear about Lex's character, like why exactly he wants Superman dead, or why at one point he even wants Batman dead too. Does he just hate aliens? Does he just hate any good guys? While Zemo gets just as lucky as Lex, we do get to learn more about him, and we actually understand why he's doing what he's doing. Like the son of the woman Stark met after one of his speeches, Zemo's family was killed during the fight in Sokovia in Age of Ultron. He too blames the Avengers for this, and sets out to destroy them. Zemo learns how to control Bucky, who is still affected by his mental conditioning by Hydra, and he finds out about a whole group of Winter Soldiers that he can control. Even though the fate of Bucky becomes disputed by Captain America and Iron Man, thanks to Zemo, they were already fighting over the Sokovia Accords. Whether Zemo was involved or not, They probably would have been fighting anyways, but he does put the final nail in the coffin by revealing that while he was being controlled, Bucky killed Stark's parents. This discovery pushed Stark over the edge and led to an intense and more personal battle with him fighting Captain America and Bucky. I'll also give Zemo's character one more thing. The film was able to use him, along with Black Panther, to deliver a good message about revenge. Zemo was consumed by his lust for revenge, and it pushed him to do unspeakable things. Black Panther was also being controlled by his thirst for revenge against Bucky after his dad was killed in the bombing that Bucky was framed for. Unlike Zemo, Black Panther decided to control his revenge instead of the other way around when he finally does confront Zemo, the real bomber. Even though both of their plans didn't make much sense, once again I have to give this one to Civil War, simply because Zemo does directly contribute to the conflict between Captain America and Iron Man. He has clear motivations for why he does what he does, and I somewhat sympathize with him. Also, they were able to pull a pretty good moral out of him. Since at their very core, they are both action movies, it only makes sense to compare which one had better action and was overall more entertaining. Starting with Civil War, it has a lot of great action scenes throughout the entire film. There's an intense opening, a great chase sequence, some well-choreographed fistfights, the awesome clash between the two opposing sides at the airport, and a very personal final battle. Even when there wasn't punching and kicking going on, I was still engaged by the constant moral battle between Steve and Tony. With its heavy ideological conflict, Civil War never forgets to have fun. There is a lot of funny dialogue and some truly hysterical scenes. Many times there's such a great sense of lighthearted fun that I couldn't help but smile. Now on to Batman v Superman. I know I've been trashing this movie a lot. To be honest, there are some great action scenes though. Batman gets a great fight scene with some of Lex's men towards the end of the movie. I already stated how he pointlessly kills people, and it's never brought up. The battle between Batman and Superman is short and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it was exciting. It's ruined by the infamous Martha scene, but at least it was some action. Now this is the part where I start criticizing again. A lot of people I know found Batman v Superman to be extremely boring. Not much happens in the first half, and the conflict between Superman and Batman isn't interesting enough to keep you invested. Again, they're just both hypocrites looking at each other in the face. It also doesn't help that it takes itself so seriously to the point of self-parody. No one provides any levity except maybe Lex, but he's not funny no matter how hard he tries to be. The ending fight with Doomsday wasn't impressive either. It's just tons of CGI being thrown at the audience's eyeballs. Then there's this stupid decision after stupid decision. I wasn't enjoying the action as much as I was cringing at how idiotic the characters were being. Action may be well choreographed or have great special effects, but if I don't care about the characters, then I'm not going to be invested in the action. Obviously, once again, I have to say Civil War did a better job. None of the action conflicted with the characters, there was a lot of comedic levity, and there was enough going on throughout the entirety of the film to keep me entertained. Okay, so I went over how Captain America Civil War and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice went about in making a great superhero fight film. So was Cap vs Iron Man or Batman vs Superman better? Alright, you can probably guess the answer by now. Of course Captain America Civil War is the better movie. The characters both had understandable motivations, the story carried major themes from The Winter Soldier, the action was really well done, the comedy was hilarious, and I was able to sympathize with the villain. I really enjoyed watching it. Batman v Superman, on the other hand, not so much. The main issue is the characters. The characters are the core of any movie, especially a superhero movie, so if they're not done well, then they become the core problem. With the exception of Batman, no one had any clear motivation for doing the things they do, but even he backslides by the end. It also didn't help that nobody was able to break through the bad writing. Congratulations to Civil War, our first winner. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and show your friends. Thanks for watching.